me scared, you want me weak, you want me brain dead and asleep. You want us trapped while you all laugh behind the scenes. You want us sick, you think we're dumb. You want us blind, then you want us drunk. You want us poor while you get more of everything. But you don't get to tell me what to think and what to do. No, you don't get to tell me what is true. 'Cause you're just liars, cheats and crooks. Change the rules and you burn the books. And so I don't believe a single word you say. You're all liars, fakes and cons. Want you out and we want you gone. So don't believe this time you'll get away. You want us tricked, you want us numb. You want us scared and you want us stunned. You want us shocked and you want us barred in every way. You want our minds, you want our time. You want us framed up in your crime. I hope you know that it's time to go and we're taking names. 'Cause you don't get to tell us what to think and what to do. No, you don't get to tell us what is true. 'Cause you're just liars, cheats and crooks. Change the rules and you burn the books. And so we don't believe a single word you say. You're all liars, fakes and cons. Want you out and we want you gone. So don't believe this time you'll get away. 'Cause we see la 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 all your lies. La 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 all your lies. You don't get to tell us what to think and what to do. You don't get to tell us what to think and what to do. You don't get to tell us what to think and what to do. You're just liars, cheats and crooks. Change the rules and you burn the books. And so we don't believe a single word you say. You're all liars, fakes and cons. Want you out and we want you gone. So don't believe this time you'll get away. 'Cause we see la 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 all your lies. La 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 all your lies. 'Cause you're just liars, cheats and crooks. Change the rules and you burn the books. So don't believe a single word you say. Want you out and want you gone. So don't believe this time you'll get away. We see la 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 all your lies. La 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 all your lies. 'Cause we see la 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 all your lies. La 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 all your lies. 'Cause we see la 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 all your lies. La 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 all your lies. 'Cause we see la 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 all your lies. La 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 all your lies.
Night
On screen. Sonny, you have a legal note.
I do have a legal note. Thank you, Whoopi.
Look at her
Matt
face.
Gates
Look at her
has
face.
long denied all allegations, calling the claims, quote, invented, and saying in a statement to ABC News that this false smear following a 3-year criminal investigation should be viewed with great skepticism, that DOJ investigation was closed with no charges being brought.
We'll be right back.
you guys appreciate what you just witnessed there. Hostages have been more amenable to giving written statements or verbal statements than Sunny Hostin right there. Look at her
screen.
face. You know what happened. They might have gotten a lawyer's letter saying, hey, you might be defaming Matt Gaetz the way you knuckleheads are defaming Tulsi Gabbard, except this is a little more actionable. Suggesting someone is a pedophile is a little bit different than suggesting they're a Russian asset. Look at her face.
Okay, Sonny.
Sonny, you got a legal matter for us, right?
You have a legal note.
I do have a legal note. Thank you, Whoopi.
I have a legal note. Look at her face. Stuck it up, Sonny. Eat crow. And I don't mean crow. Look at this face, by the way. And if you noticed, there's a scowl, just a little scowl. There, right there. Oh, it's so tough. Look at that face. That's the face of when you are forced to suck on a lemon, Sonny. Eat crow, because you've been spreading defamatory lies about Matt Gaetz and Tulsi Gabbard, and you're a bunch of filthy, rotten scoundrels. Holy crab apples, people. All right, we got a good one today. Ed Dowd, you all love him, is going to be on here in a few seconds. We're going to talk about the poop emoji economy that Biden is leaving over for Donald Trump. But before we get into, and we're going to talk about some COVID numbers, but before we even get there, we have to talk about two things. Oh my gosh, get out and don't come back in. Yeah, two things. They're on the wrong side now. What? The dog. She's annoying. She waits for the show to get started to be annoying. Our two sponsors of the day, people. We got Be Naked, which is about being a man. They say that evolution has gone soft, that men have traded their strength for comfort. But if you're not about to let your instincts go dull, it's time to fuel up with something raw, real, and primal. Naked organs. And good news, you don't actually have to eat the organs in order to get the nutrients of the organs. We're talking pure bison liver, kidney, heart, and testicles. Some of the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. Bison liver alone packs up to 3 times more vitamin A than muscle meat, along with high levels of vitamin B12, iron, and folate, all essential for energy, immune health, to keep you sharp. The best part, you'll get all of these powerhouse nutrients in a form that is easy to take. You don't actually have to eat the testicles, people, although I've done it. You're better off in a nutrient form. Head over to BeNaked.com. Use promo code VIVA to get 15% off. Time to silence the noise, reclaim your power, and get back to being unstoppable. BeNaked.com. Promo code VIVA gets you 15% off. And our second and last sponsor of the day, also a Rumble partner, as is Be Naked. Coffee, everybody drinks it. Rumble is over-indexed in coffee drinkers as a platform, and it's delicious stuff. Do you know that 95% of coffee beans are as bland and overprocessed as the mainstream media? Enter Peaberry Coffee, the 5% that refuses to bow to mediocrity. The beans are denser, richer, and packed with bold flavor. 1775 Peaberry Coffee isn't just a drink. It's a statement grown at high altitudes, hand-picked with care like election ballots should be, and roasted to perfection. It's rare, bold, and uncompromising. Whether it's Peaberry, a darker roast, or even a mushroom blend, it's all about quality, freedom, and pushing back against the system, because life's too short to drink coffee made by people who do not like you, do not respect you, and will dump on you every chance they get after they've taken your hard-earned money. Go to 1775coffee.com, grab some Peaberry, taste what coffee is meant to be. Use promo code VIVA, 15% off. Do not settle for mediocrity. Brew the rebellion at home. 1775coffee.com, promo code VIVA, 15% off. Links are in the description. People, I see Edward in the backdrop. My brother's middle name is Edward, actually. I just realized that. Ed, you ready to come in? Thumbs up. Coming in whether you like it or not. Coming in hot. Sir, how goes the battle?
The battle continues, and we won a great victory, but the war is not won.
Well, the victory of the election.
Yes.
Okay. I was thinking maybe there were some updates in some lawsuits that were pending. Ed, we're not going to dive in like we did the last time to your upbringing, everything, who you are, but the 30,000-foot overview for those who may not know. You got a good bio on the internet, so it's easy for everyone to get wise to it. But for those who may not have heard of you, who are you?
Yeah, I'm a Wall Street executive. I worked at HSBC, Donaldson, Lufkin, and Jenrette. Spent 10 years at Blackrock managing a large cap growth equity portfolio. We grew it from $2 billion to $14 billion. And left Blackrock in 2012 and been doing entrepreneurial things. Recently entered the fray in 2021 when I started noticing that on Maui, no one I knew had COVID or died. But then people started getting COVID and dying in 21 with the introduction of the supposed safe and effective vaccine. Had a thesis, started observing things going on with insurance company results and funeral home results. Dr. Malone came to Maui. He elevated my social network profile. And then eventually I hooked up with two PhD physicists in Portugal. We now have a company, Phinance Technologies, that's pre-revenue. We've been doing a lot of work for free on the vaccine issue. And we just basically took large databases, analyzed them, and showed an increase in excess deaths, disabilities, and injuries in all sorts of different countries. We focused in on root causes in the databases, and we showed inflection points in a host of different things like cardiac arrests, cancers, neurological issues, mental issues, starting inflecting in 21. The good news is the excess death rate has come down. It peaked in 21, 22.
That's a dark silver lining. Laugh about it. It's like the good news is people have stopped dying because so many have already died. Presumably, I mean that's why it comes down.
Well, it peaked statistically at 40% for those between 15 and 64 in the U.S. You got to remember that age group doesn't die, so it was smaller numbers. Most of the people who died were in the elderly, 65 plus. So 1.2 million Americans died as of 2023. We haven't done the 21 through 23. We haven't done the autopsy on 24 yet. The booster uptake is abysmal. So the excess death rates come down from 40% for the 15 to 64 to about 7 to 13% run rate. Now that's still alarmingly high because one of the famous quotes by an insurance executive, Scott Davison, said in 2022, January, 10% excess death is a once in a 200-year flood. 40% was off the charts. So now we've gone from off the charts to once in a 200-year flood continuously as of 2024. So
if I could flesh out the number though, the 40% excess death, the age range was what again? 18 to 40?
It was working age, 16 through 64.
Okay, 40% increase in excess death.
Right.
Right. That was 2022 over 2021, or was that 2021 over 2020?
2021. It came down in 22, but it peaked in 2021 when the mandates hit.
Okay, and now
and specifically in the third quarter of 2021 when the mandates hit.
Where are you pulling the data from to come to that conclusion?
We're pulling it from the CDC, the death data, just the big death data. We also have other analysts working on this to corroborate our numbers. There's a guy on Twitter, Ethical Skeptic. He's got the same numbers as us. So we're running, and then I have whistleblowers inside the insurance industry that tell me that young folks are still running between 10 and 20%. Our numbers show 7 to 13, so I'll go with our numbers. I think the group life people are adversely hit because they are the ones who got the mandates. The general bigger population had choices.
Okay, that's fascinating. So you're dealing with what are, I guess, relatively objective statistics. I think the only issue is going to be determining the cause. When you see the excess death is spiked around 40% in whatever the time frame, I presume you have sub data as to what the causes of death are.
No, we didn't get, not in the U.S. We had to analyze. In the U.S., we eventually did it, but it doesn't say COVID vaccine. It's just a host of different different disorders. Cardiac arrest took off, and the smoking gun is the young. People that are younger tend to be healthier, and they tend not to die of heart attacks, liver disease, kidney disease, neurological disorders, but they started inflecting in 2021. Now, people anecdotally are hearing about this all over the place. The good news is, even though it's 40%, sounds alarmingly high, but you got to remember 40% excess death of a population that doesn't normally die on absolute numbers is not that big. Because
this looks like a Twitter comment, it's like 40% of what percent? It's true, but because young people don't die, so the number is relatively low. If it doubles, you'll go from whatever low number.
We're measuring it again. It's all measured against the baseline run rate expected deaths prior to 2020. So we looked at expected death rates in a whole host of cohorts, and you come up with a baseline number that's pretty steady. Then it started inflecting up. And again, people got to remember, this is how insurance companies make money. I mean, they issue these policies because people don't die at these ages. They're group life policies. They're not underwritten, meaning there's no doctor that examines you. They just give it to you as a benefit when you join a company, meaning if you die while employed, you get 1 or 2 times your base salary. It's a phenomenal business for the insurance companies, but they took on losses in 21 and 22. The problem doesn't exist anymore because they've raised pricing and eliminated the problem.
And just to illustrate that distinction that some people might not appreciate, like a group plan, there's no individual assessment. It's not individual life insurance. When I got mine, they check for everything. They ask for history, medicals, they take blood samples. This is statistically, they're not paying out that much, and it doesn't correlate into massive payouts because people are not supposed to die that much at that age bracket. And so you didn't get the breakdowns of causes of death, not that they would ever attribute it to the jab, but you did see things, statistical anomalies as relates to heart issues and cancer.
Yeah, we saw 16 to 20 standard deviation events, which anything above 3 is considered a black swan. 3 standard deviations is basically the probability of something happening different from the mean. And so 3 standard deviation event is 0.03% of the time, or 0.3% of the time it happens. So it's a rare outcome. In finance, when we see 3 standard deviation events, they're rare and they usually give us signals that something's different is going on. So when you see statistical events above 3, 16, it's something changed, right? So, we're not doctors, we don't pretend to be, but, I'm an investor and I can come up with a hypothesis. My hypothesis is it's a mandated jab that a lot of doctors are now saying causes all sorts of things. So we came out early saying something happened. We think it's the vaccine until proven otherwise. That's what we're going with. And then as time has gone on, the studies keep, the scientific studies, backfill and roll out. And now we have all sorts of papers suggesting that the mRNA vaccine is the worst vaccine that we've ever created.
Well, I don't know if this person is accused. Come on, Vivi, you have to admit the statistical evidence is absolutely damning. I'm just playing sort of a facetious, tongue-in-cheek devil's advocate because they blame it on long COVID. They blame it on environment. They blame it on alcoholism. They'll blame it on drugs, which I presume is part of the problem as well. They'll blame it on the consequences of the lockdowns, et cetera, stress, which is still bad. But the question that I had was as related. Oh, the booster intake. What are the boosters up to now in terms of intake? Like 3?
I think 3%. So that's good. That's good news. And to your point, look, 1.2 million people died excessively. And we can't prove that was all due to the vax. But when I talked to my genius, Carlos, the PhD physicist and PhD in finance, he came from Wall Street. We think it's probably at least 80%, and the others were drug overdoses, whatever, other things caused by the pandemic. But, we're pretty confident that a large majority of the 1.2 million is vaccine related.
And then, like, even assume it's 50%, whatever. The bottom line is you don't have a 40% increase in death by heart attack of that age demographic without something wildly being different. And they'll say it was the COVID infection, inflammation, whatever.
Yeah, let's talk about this for a second. So in 2020, there were 500,000 excess deaths, and there's lots of books and things being written on that it was the treatment protocols that killed a lot of these people.
What age bracket was that excess death?
That was the whole all of US.
Okay.
Then if you look at the age bracket, just the working age people, 16 to 64, 124,000 people died in that age bracket in 2020, excessively. Then you roll into 2021, that number went up to 230,000. So we had a mix shift. Mostly old people died in 2020. Then we had another 500,000 excess deaths in 21, but a mix shift from old to young. So riddle me this, Batman. Was it the virus that decided to go after age-defined groups now? You ask an epidemiologist, there's never been a virus that goes after the young after attacking the old.
Well, that's a good point. I was going to play the devil's advocate and the scheming devil's advocate. Don't think I believe this to say, well, all the old people died in 2020, so there were only younger people left to die in 2021. But that wouldn't make sense, because if that were true, that the young people would have been dying as well in correlative numbers in 2020. So it doesn't make sense.
Correct. There would have been proportionately. But what happened was it increased by 70% in 2021 over 2020. That doesn't make any sense. And also, there were mandates. Let's not forget, the mandates really hit the working age quite hard.
And you know, Ed, that someone's making a remix and you're going to be in a rap video next time, or like a disking.
That'll be great.
Ed, so, okay, it's fascinating. I'm just trying to think of the other So let's just assume that you attribute a sliding scale of causality or percentage-wise, anywhere from 0 to 100 and anywhere in between. Like starting at 10%, what's the excess death globally? And I know I've heard you say the number, and it's mind-blowing, but not shocking, as to excess deaths, or at least deaths caused by the jab. Like, what's the sliding scale of the low end versus the high end?
Yeah, so we came up with estimates for the U.S. and did some back of the envelope math and came up with some conservative estimates. And I want to talk about disabilities. The numbers are much bigger in disabilities and more interesting than the excess deaths, and I think more of a smoking gun. But let me first give you our estimates. We believe there were 8 to 15 million people who died of the jabs. Dennis Rancourt, another analyst, believe up in Canada with a different methodology, came up with 17 million.
Globally.
Globally.
Okay.
So, our high end is right at his estimate. We could debate about the numbers, but something definitely happened globally. Then the disabilities in the US were 4 million excess disabilities off a base of 30 million. So we went from 30 million disabled people in the Bureau of Labor Statistics to 34 million by June of 2023. The most rapid increase occurred in 2021. And if you look at the numbers of the disabled, the 4 million in the US, 2 million of them were employed. That doesn't make any sense because the employed are the most healthy amongst us. They get up and go to work. They're able to show up for their job. Why would they comprise half of the newly disabled? Well, our thesis is mandates, of course, vaccine injuries. Then we look at injuries. We look at the Pfizer clinical data, and the severe adverse event incidence in the vaccine arm was 18% greater than the placebo arm. So we also noticed there were chronic absences and work time lost beginning in 21 and exploded in 2022, statistically 12 standard deviations above. We attribute that to injury, people who have some sort of walking immune compromised system that constantly gets sick and miss work. We estimate that in the US to be 33 million, globally 500 to 900 million. So it's a funnel. What we have is a COVID vaccine funnel of injured, disabled, and dead. We talk about the dead a lot, but the big numbers are in the injured and the disabled. Yep. And it's a funnel. You don't necessarily have to stay there. You can move from injured to disabled, disabled to dead, or go from injured to dead. It's a funnel.
I was going to make a sinister joke, but you don't go from dead to injured. So you don't go back up in the funnel.
You don't go back up in the funnel. No.
And in terms of where you're getting these numbers for, like, I was just trying to do math, but my calculator doesn't go to 5 billion. I think they say like something like, how many billions of people got the jab, or at least a portion of it? 5 billion,
but not all of them were mRNA. That's why we have ranges of 8 to 15 million, because
and that's why, like, the number is shocking. But if you divide, I mean, what is 18 million? What percentage? I think that's like less than 0.3%. Of death, correct. Which you assume, even if you go by the, let's just say one in a million dies from the jab. I can't do the math that quickly, but I know that that's a lot.
The swine flu in the 70s was pulled after 50 deaths. We have 30,000 vaccine deaths in bears, which we're ignoring completely.
And then the
should have been pulled at 1,000.
Yeah, but the steel man is, they say, well, those are reports; they're not confirmed because VAERS doesn't confirm anything. But there's that old joke, like it could be China or India, but they say, like, if you're 1 in a million in China, there's still 1,000 others just like you. But like, if you're 1 in a million who dies from the jab at a scale of 5 billion, I don't know how many million of that translates to, but nobody can really contradict the stats. The only thing they can do is like try to fill in the blank for causality, long COVID, correct. Environment, whatever.
One of the most alarming things is, these numbers are real, these stats are real, but the institutions, the health institutions, and the apparatus of government don't seem to want to talk about it. I mean, we have numbers that were worse than the pre-vaccine. So questions should be asked: Why are people dying and getting disabled at alarming rates and getting new injuries and new diseases presenting, like turbo cancer? All turbo cancer is a rapid onset of a cancer. And Kevin McKernan, one of the scientists, just released a study showing that he believes that the DNA contamination in the mRNA vaccines is causing these turbo cancers. It's a scientific study. So what we think is now being proven by science.
The question that I had also, yes, it was an observation where the idea that excess deaths would be more after the pandemic it's anomalous. It doesn't make sense.
No.
And Barnes and I talked about it even before. Like it doesn't make sense. So something else is clearly going on.
Right. Something else is going on, and there seems to be a lack of curiosity about it, which, on Wall Street, when someone doesn't want to talk about something, it's usually because I'm right or you're right or we're all right.
Well, it's as anomalous as the 81 million votes for Biden in 2020 and then right back down to 73 million in 2024 compared to 65 million in 2016. Okay, that's wild. I don't want to spend the entire time talking about this, but that is the latest as to where you're at with the numbers and the what is it called? The actuarial statistics now?
Yeah, and look, I want to also point out some Swiss Re, a reinsurer in Europe, put out a study saying that we're going to have excess deaths for the next 10 years, confirming their number, I think, is 5%, but confirming what we said. But of course, they blame it on COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So you have an insurance company basically saying the numbers are correct, but they just disagree on the reason.
Have you broken down, however, the excess deaths to vaccination? I guess that's where the whole world got hit with.
We could end all this if we had the data of who was vaccinated and who wasn't, and we don't. We don't have that micro level. We could end this debate if those numbers were released, because we don't know that. For every death, we don't know whether they were vaccinated or not vaccinated. But
in terms of countries, like do you know offhand what the least vaccinated country is?
Not off the top of my head.
Because that's also, like, I would look to like the least vaccinated countries and then their excess mortality, but there might be a slew of other factors that come into play versus the most highly vaccinated countries and excess death. No, it's there's obviously something there, and nobody's talking about that little blip, the anomalous 81 million votes in 2020, and nobody's talking about why excess death is still there, albeit less.
It's persistent now. It's persistent.
Well, okay. Okay, I'll see if I missed any questions there. But now this sort of does dovetail into what you have dubbed the turd of an economy that Trump is going to inherit from Biden, and part of the issue here is you do attribute a massive economic loss number, like a dollar figure, to the death in the working force or the working class of America.
Yeah, I think our total number as of 2023, haven't done 24 yet, is about 235 billion, and that's in lost wages, either through death, disability, or lost work time. So and of course we don't calculate the multiplier effects of that. There are multiplier effects. We're just using the raw wages that from the economic numbers. So there's so 235 billion is like the low end of what this has cost us.
Wow. Someone actually brought up a good point. Compare I'm going to go see if there's any stats on whether or not there's excess death or even increased death statistically among the Amish, who we know, at least by the North American standard, are the least COVID vaccinated, shot. I'm not even calling it that. The least received the COVID jab in the least numbers. Now, so this stuff is mind blowing. The book that you've written is
Cause Unknown, the
Cause
Epidemic of
Unknown.
Sudden Deaths in 21 and 23.
Okay, and from what I understand, you have not. You've done an what is it called when you revise a prior edition?
we added a few pages and some things for 2023. It's very similar to the old book. If you haven't bought the first one, buy this one. It's the most up to date.
Cause Unknown. I will. I'll share the link in a second when I can type it out. Okay, so now, but the other big breaking news thingy that you're working on is breaking down and explaining what the not such good news, no silver lining in the economy, and how the numbers of the Biden, what do I want to call this, economy have been fudged, much like every other number that we've seen, such that Trump looks like he's going to inherit a flaming bag of turd come January.
Absolutely. So I didn't say this on this show, but I'm known for two things. Obviously, vaccine research and economic analysis, and my partners have economic indicators that they had before COVID ever hit that worked pretty well. We were forecasting a recession at the end of 23, beginning of 24. It never came to fruition. and the economy started bouncing. Our indicators started bouncing in October of 23. Never got to expansion territory. So we were trying to figure out, have the laws of economics been suspended, or is there something else going on? And we put out a report in September kind of breaking down what happened. It's kind of a gray swan event. Basically, the government started to run $2 trillion deficits. And I want people to understand what that means. In the great financial crisis, we ran a deficit that was 10% of GDP. That was a crisis, okay? We were running deficits now that are 8% of GDP, 8%, crisis level deficits. So what did they do with that spending? They basically used it for several things: to hire government makeshift worker jobs, to hand out money to the Green Deal people, and to bring in illegal immigrants. If you figure that each illegal immigrant either got direct aid or indirect aid from an NGO that came from the Treasury spending, that's $1.5 trillion right there alone. Because there were about 10 million illegal immigrants documented that came through. Let's call it 15 as the real number. That's $1.5 trillion if each individual received $10,000 in some form of aid, whether direct or indirect. People facilitating them getting into the country got paid. So that was a big injection into the economy. It helps inflation. It changes the demographics of the country. So why did they do that? They wanted to pump up the economy and also change the electorate and ensure they stay in power. They also started issuing treasuries on the short end, which helped liquidity in the stock market. There was a whole host of things that they did, but running these crisis level deficits is definitely one of them. So that's where the bounce came from. Now Trump's policies, this is the important thing to understand, are going to unwind all that. So you're going to take out those $2 trillion deficits that have been holding up the economy, not the real economy, but the fake GDP number, the fake non-farm payrolls. That's all going to reverse out, And he's going to inherit a bank crisis probably.
Okay, if I may back it up, I'm going to ask some very, very stupid questions because this stuff makes my brain go haywire. GDP, gross domestic product, that is the aggregate of wages, products, like basically what a country produces.
Correct. It's around 29 trillion right now.
Okay. And then the deficit is obviously the difference between spent and earned. So the government is spending more than the GDP is producing. No.
So the government spends about 6 trillion a year, but deficit spending is another 2 trillion on top of that. So that's 8 trillion. So the percentage is versus the GDP. So 2 trillion divided by 29 is about 7-8%.
Okay.
And we ran 10% deficits during the great financial crisis because the government is supposed to come in during recessions and crises to stimulate the economy. We didn't have a crisis except the fact that we were probably going to go into a recession before the election, which would have turfed Biden's chances. So our government decided to spend ahead of that and paper it over. And now the bill is due.
All right. And spend on what?
Illegal immigrants.
Anything? Well, I mean, the spending in Ukraine. I mean, that's part and parcel of it as well.
That's part of it, but that dwarfs in comparison to what we think went into the illegal immigration. Think about it. We brought in, the official numbers are 10 million, including children under Biden. They accelerated that in the last 2 years. So let's call it 15 because you can't. They're called border contacts. So some people are going to slip through. Then there's the NGOs and then the government agencies, and then there's money supplied to relocate these people. They sometimes get direct benefits, sometimes not. There's been reports that each immigrant received 10,000. I don't think that's correct, but they did receive some aid. They get housing that costs money. They're put up in hotels. The government pays for that. NGOs get paid to then facilitate all of this. It's been a black ops operation. This is a big part of the spend. The extra spend, the extra 2 trillion.
But I guess so. I'm dense. But how does spending do anything to do anything? But how does it do anything except unbalance in a negative sense your books? Like,
Well,
what's
spending when you spend, it immediately goes into the economy. Bank accounts get opened, and so it's short-term stimulates the economy, but it's not a productive stimulus. It doesn't. There's no return on investment. So you're just bringing in people, undocumented workers, giving them money and aid, and that stimulates the economy in the short term. This money just gets injected directly.
where's the money coming from? I have to ask a basic stupid question.
Well, it's coming from the deficits and the bond issuance that we're doing. So we're basically borrowing to ensure our own political destruction.
From whom are we borrowing?
From the global capital markets that buy our bonds.
And who are the biggest buyers of American bonds?
The Chinese, the Europeans, the Japanese, and also all the banks domestically that have to buy treasuries as well. The U.S. Treasury market is the most liquid, biggest market on the planet, and a lot of people use the Treasury market to price other securities off of, and they use it as collateral to make other loans and speculations. So we have the reserve currency status, and we've been on a spending spree since Obama. And this is why we're at the point where it's kind of endgame stages here. And we spend $2 trillion in our own treasure to bring in illegal aliens, Green New Deal stuff, and hire government workers. You got to remember the payroll numbers were pretty false. They were revised down in August, 850,000 jobs. And people, those of us in finance, we're watching them print a number, then revise it quietly the next month down. And then in the month of September, they hired 750,000 government workers, the month of September alone.
It was revised down 800 and some odd thousand from what total number?
I forget the total number, but the revision, it was 10%. We lost 1 million jobs magically in 1 month.
Well, they never existed in the first place, but it was okay. I want to say I remembered it being like 10%. Okay, just last thing on the treasuries, the bonds. Foreign countries buy them, and that, I presume the government says, okay, you buy these, we'll pay you. What interest are they getting on those bonds?
Well, currently they're getting, depending on where you buy on the yield curve, the T-bill is at 4.6%. The 10 years at 4.4%, and the 30-year I think is a little lower at the moment.
Okay, and so that is basically say guaranteed you're making 4% on your money, but so the government's got to pay that out, and at some point it's got to pay back the bond. It's got to pay back the people who bought it.
These bonds mature. So the U.S. has been running under Clinton. He actually balanced the budget and had a surplus, believe it or not, under Clinton. Since the great financial crisis, we've been spending like drunken sailors, and we've been deficit spending, but the deficits are now at crisis level deficit spending. 8% is crisis level. What I'm saying is you can't spend like this. It's unsustainable. And Trump's policies are going to unwind all this.
Okay.
That's what he got voted in for, because this kind of spending creates inflation. This is why we have an inflation problem.
Okay, but he's going to come in now and make government more efficient with the Department of Governmental Efficiency. What are the concrete policies that he's going to implement? It's going to be less government employees, less federal employees, less. Sorry, go for it.
Yeah, less federal employees, deportation, reversing all those people who came in and got goodies are going to leave. So all this short-term sugar is going the other way. The private sector is already in recession. This is the problem. So Trump is going to try to unleash through deregulation, middle-class tax cuts, lower energy prices. He's going to try and reinvigorate the private sector. So the fiscal dominance that we've seen over the last 2 years has gone most proportionally to the rich and those in government. Once he reverses that, it's going to cause a technical recession. The numbers get revised down. Stock prices come down. I'm sure the Fed will engineer somehow a bank crisis, because if you remember last year, we had bank failures. Mm-hmm. They lended money against that, called the Bank Term Funding Program, that ended in March. And as we speak right now, all those loans are almost gone. So there could be another liquidity crisis down the road.
And now the issue this is they're going to say this any recession is going to be Trump's fault because he's implementing policy. Recession, technically, I think that what the definition changed, but what is it? Is it 2 quarters of negative growth?
Two quarters of negative GDP growth. They tried to revise it under Biden because we had 2 slight negative quarters in 2022, and that's why they implemented what they did to bring up the GDP numbers because they were already rolling over.
Okay, and now I think I'm piecing it together in terms of illegal immigrants and how that would impact or artificially impact GDP. Whoever were to implement the policies that would need to be implemented in order to stop the runaway spending will be accused of or will in fact lead to something of what could be called a recession.
Correct.
Okay.
But if we continued on this path, it was basically going to be a revolution because, you can't continue to spend. The capital markets would eventually figure this out, and you're changing the fabric of the country so fast. And most of the jobs that have been gained have been by foreign workers. The U.S. citizen job growth has actually plummeted. So the jobs are going to the illegals. You were devastating the middle class. Trump was elected basically because the middle class is already in a recession. Mm-hmm. The very rich are kicking ass. The people on the low end are getting goodies. It's the people in the middle that work and do everything in this country that were getting screwed. So what needs to be communicated by the Trump administration is this is going to seem like it's our fault, but it's not. We're going to reinvigorate and create animal spirits, deregulate the economy, lower energy prices, lower taxes for middle class, and then we hopefully have a boom coming out of this. But the current path was death of the country, and that needs to be communicated. So recession it's not the end of the world. We'll soldier on, but they're going to try to blame Trump, and Trump needs to get out in front of this.
Do you know offhand, like what percentage of the goodies that go to foreign workers or illegal immigrants leave the country, just get shipped back to families back home?
There's some of that definitely occurs, but you got to remember. I'll just use an example. One person comes over the border, an NGO picks them up, gives them a plane ticket, sends them to a city. There's NGOs there at that city. They have money that they're getting from wherever, it's the government slush funds. That money gets spent on salaries for those people that are facilitating that. Then this person may or may not get some aid, maybe a couple $1,000s for food or stuff to buy. These people come with nothing, but they end up immediately, whatever aid they get, they immediately inject it into the economy. They go to Walmart, they buy clothes, they buy shoes. That's how it's done. That stimulates the economy. That's just one person.
No, now it makes sense because some people are going to say, well, they're not wasting their spending. It's costing trillions of dollars, but it's literally either printed or procured from foreign investment, given to, call them illegals. Well, I guess it's not a substantial portion that they send back to families abroad, whatever. They then go spend it locally, so it looks like things are going well, but they're spending money that wasn't theirs, that was printed out of thin air or borrowed from foreign countries, right. And at some point, that's got to be paid back.
And at some point, the bill has to be paid. The bond markets are not the global capital markets will not allow the U.S. to run $2 trillion structural deficits forever. This is a problem.
Okay, very interesting. And the other question that I just had, this is something I just cannot, if you can simplify it so that I can understand it, wow. The interest rates, where people say if the feds reduce interest rates now, it'll cause a recession, but other people are saying the interest rates now are too high for anybody to even borrow money or buy a home. And so you got to explain the correlation to me about why it would be almost sabotage for the feds to lower interest rates now, whereas I would tend to think that they would need to, and they should have done it a while ago.
So it's money and interest rates and inflation and deflation are very difficult concepts for people to understand. So let's go back to COVID under Trump. Trump was tricked, and he unleashed the most tremendous amount of government spending we've ever seen. The Fed came in, printed the money, then the government gave it out, and it was like 65% increase in money supply, the most unprecedented monetary injection, the biggest increase in our deficit. It was insane. Okay, and That then created inflation that showed, and monetary policy has an 18-month lag. So they did that in 2020. Inflation started showing up, 12 to 18 months later in 2021 under Biden. Then the Federal Reserve, to fight that inflation, took us from 0 interest rates to 5.5.
Okay, if I may stop you right there. I don't understand how that is supposed to stop inflation. The inflation came from printing money. So let's just say they literally moved a decimal in the federal system, and they created money out of thin air. All that money enters the market right now. And
well, it enters the market, but it's a fractional reserve banking system, so that it creates money supply. By raising interest rates, they withdraw money supply. So money supply peaked, and now money supply is below 0. Money supply growth. It's about the growth rate, not the actual number. The growth is below 0. And that they're pulling money out of the economy to make up for the mistake that they made by creating the inflation. So it does it over time. And so when they raise the interest rates, the effects of this take 18 months. Guess when that occurred? May of this year. So we have and year-over-year CPI is coming down. So bond markets look at rate of change. So inflation's coming down, but it's not like, it doesn't matter. It went up so much, it's coming down a little. People still don't see it, but the bond markets look ahead. Rate of inflation's coming down. The business conditions are getting worse. So the Fed's lowering interest rates because they know there's banking issues in the banking system and there's money is tight. So that's why they're lowering. It's a signal of it's not a good signal and it's not a speculative signal. It's a signal of something bad is going on behind the scenes. This is what I think.
Okay.
And you got to remember, in the Great Financial Crisis, the Fed had started cutting interest rates in 2007, and they cut them all the way down. They did the same thing in 2000. In March of 2000, they started cutting interest rates, and the recession came later. So as the Fed starts cutting, it's an early warning indicator that the economy is getting worse.
Okay. And now when inflation comes down, inflation is still going up. It's just going up slower. It's not negative inflation yet.
No, we're not going to go back to the prices we had in 21. It's just that the rate of change, it's rolling over. Commodity prices peaked in 22. If you look at the price of oil, it's at $69 versus inflation. It's cheaper than it's so cheap versus the real price of oil is super cheap. Trump wants to get that even lower. So right now, we have a real economy that's rolling over. We have this fake economy with the sugar high they injected. We have the banking crisis looming, and we have the Fed starting to lower interest rates, indicating to me that the worst is yet to come.
Okay, and now I guess we're going to get to the practical. What does Trump need to do in a second? But what does the worst is yet to come actually look like?
Look, it's hard to predict. If Harris had won, I was looking for financial Armageddon. Under Trump, we have a shot. So the Trump model is to reinvigorate the middle class and grow our GDP so that our debt to GDP ratio comes down from 123% down to somewhere below 100. And so it's a growth model. Trump wants a growth model. The Biden-Harris administration wanted
spending on steroids model.
Yeah, model. And so I'm less bearish about the outcome. So it means financial assets will reprice. I was looking for a very big reset of more than 50% discount to the stock market. I'm less bearish, but it's still going to be painful. It's not Armageddon. And Trump, now if the Trump administration makes missteps or get caught up in wars, we're going to have issues. But
from a cynical perspective, that might explain why they're trying to sabotage everything by starting World War III before Trump gets into office. You said something about the ratio of GDP to deficit.
Debt to GDP.
Debt to GDP. I'm sorry. And I think that Trump did talk about that on Rogan, right? Where he was talking about the idea is like if you unleash production, you can then sort of lower. You could. It's not the end of the world where the ratio comes down a little bit by increasing productivity, as opposed to kneecapping productivity at home.
Right. So there's two ways. There's two ways to close your debt to GDP. The Harris model was to tax you to death and destroy the real economy, or grow your way out of it. That's Trump's model. And the growth of grow your way out of it gives the middle income earner a bigger share of the pie. So under Harris-Biden, the rich became richer, and the middle class got destroyed. And we have a graph that I put out on Twitter that showed that under Trump, the middle class real per capita increased into at the end of his term, and the share of financial assets of the rich decreased slightly. Under Harris-Biden, that's all been, Trump's gains have all been reversed due to inflation, and the rich have gone from 13. When I say rich, 0.1% of the country owns under Trump owned 13% of the financial assets. Now that's at 15% under Harris.
And now that's not just a 2% difference. That's closer to a 10% because it's the 2% of 13.
Yeah, it's a huge increase. I mean, and if you look at the long-term graph, it broke out. I mean, they've never owned 15%.
And so then the question is this: it's almost not a sabotage, but it's like it's almost a dirty trick. If Trump follows through on policy, the inevitable was going to happen. If he doesn't, the inevitable happens later on, and it's even more disastrous. They're going to blame it on him in the short term, score their political points for the 2026. I don't want to say, are they called midterms? Here's
my analysis. Trump needs to get everything done in the first 2 years. We'll lose the House and the Senate. You just have to assume, because of what's going on in the economy in 25 and 26, we'll lose the House and Senate. So he has to get everything done. After that, he's lame duck. So the next 2 years are critical, very critical. I'm already assuming he loses. Traditionally, when you sweep in, I mean, Obama had the same thing. Obama had the House, the Senate, and the presidency. When he got in, he lost it in the midterms, and things weren't even that bad. So let's just assume Trump loses the midterms, he loses the House and the Senate.
Yeah, but then what impact does that have come 2028? I mean, is the idea that it's that?
Well, if the growth model works, just like under Reagan, the 27 and 28 will be phenomenal. And then Reagan won again because he said, "Hey, do you feel better now than you did before I got in?" And the resounding answer was yes, and he got elected to another term. So even though it won't be Trump, it'll be Republicans if they can pull this off. I mean, again, there's a lot between now and then.
All right, and let me see. There was some discussion as to whether or not the inflation was caused by Putinflation. They were blaming it on the war, but others were saying this is because of what was printed during COVID, which takes some time to materialize. Multiple factors to the inflation, obviously.
Well, the Trump administration, it happened under his watch, but the Biden administration shut down energy production. That was definitely inflationary, and then they started to impose all sorts of regulations, and bringing in illegal immigrants is super inflated. So they added. Inflation probably wouldn't have been as worse if Trump had stayed in. It would have gone up, but the Biden team exacerbated it definitely with energy production and illegal immigration, which is inflationary, very inflationary.
So basically, Trump's got to, shrinking the size of the government, the feds, saves money, but then people are out of work and they've got to find jobs in the private sector.
Right.
Which they're not going to like.
I've heard this idea floated around by Elon, so I'm just going to assume it's correct. Let's say you fire all these people and you say, we'll give you a 2-year severance. And everyone will be like, oh, they don't deserve it. Well, actually, give them 2 years. That won't inject as much savings into the economy right away, but it'll keep these people from freaking out and give them 2 years to find a job in the private sector. The bond markets will look at that as a one-time cost, and we'll look through it and price out the future savings. So even though it seems like a lot of money, the bond markets won't care. So that's the good news. It'll be like when a corporation has a big layoff and has a big charge to earnings, the stock markets don't look at that. They're like, oh, that's going to be a lot of savings. That's going to be good down the road. So the stock market, doesn't care about layoffs. The bond markets won't care about layoffs. Or the cost of the layoffs. The costs don't matter.
All right. And then the idea is unleash energy production, deregulate everything in America. The now unemployed public sector will have an easier time creating wealth in the private sector.
Right, and give them some runway so they don't freak out. Give them a decent severance, and some people might actually take it. Some people be like, "I'll take that." We might lose people saying, "Oh, that sounds like a good idea." I get 2 years.
Are you, if I may ask, and feel free not to answer, are you in direct contact with anybody in the Trump camp or the Team Trump?
No, I'm on Maui. I'm sure some people have watched me on social media, but I'm like the fat kid outside the ballpark trying to figure out who's winning from the applause. So
that's a good that analogy. Never heard that before. I know you don't have all day, and I want to respect your time. If I may, there's a question here. Viva, please ask Ed about the deaths attributed to overuse and abuse of the various ventilators used in the hospitals and the old age homes. Invasive ventilation, we've talked about that many times, and mechanical ventilator that keeps your airways open. I don't know that you've dissected the stats going back to the intro topic about.
No, we didn't look at the causes of excess deaths in 2020. We focused on after 21. We looked at 2020 to figure out, what was the baseline excess deaths and the age makeup, but we didn't go into causes.
All right, and then we got Finboy Slick, who's jokingly saying you're wrong. Excess deaths were clearly climate change, and they literally tried to blame it on that.
Absolutely, climate change. Come on.
Well, no, technically it's true. We'll call it environment change. They change the environment by making people do certain things and locking them down and then jacking them up. So you say the illegal immigration cost. What was the number you had on it?
Well, look. This is spitballing.
Yeah, again, for sure. No, just like the idea, because I'm trying to.
I think if we were to do an audit of all the monies that went to facilitating this illegal immigration, it's anywhere between 500 billion to 1.5 trillion. All right, it's my guess.
And how much have we? How much has the U.S. invested in the war in Ukraine? Now that's over $1 trillion, right? Is that near $2 trillion? Am I totally wrong?
No, I don't think it's 2 trillion. I think it's.
No, I'm sorry. No, not. I'm sorry. Okay, no, hold on. I got to get that number. Although the chat's going to get it first. Okay.
That's part of this deficit spending, but the bulk of it was this immigration, which had the most impact on the economy in the short term. In the very short term.
Does Hyphen asks, will Trump reinvent the Federal Reserve? Are you able to? Well, what the Federal Reserve is, I mean, you saw the clip of the guy that the president saying, yeah, even if Trump tells me to step down, I'm not stepping down because we don't answer to the government. Do you think there's going to be any moves to I don't even know if you can restructure the Federal Reserve or abolish the Federal Reserve?
Well, you can't do it all in one step. That would cause global financial panic. Definitely there needs to be reforms, auditing, some sort of more control, less politicalization of the Fed. The Fed seems to me to be a DNC apparatus. It's been infiltrated by DNC operatives. We have to be very careful when Trump takes over. We don't want to do, we still as a country need the ability to tap the bond markets to fund our country and to keep it going. So, and we have and the Treasury's goal is to defend that and defend the dollar. So we can't, I'm all for change, but let's not go kooky.
No, I think I do believe I meant billion, not trillion. It was 600 and some odd. It's I think it was 1.5 to 2 billion. So I just that was the number I had in my head for the support for Ukraine. There was something else, Ed, I'm going to forget to ask you about. Oh, cripe. Okay, I think I might have forgotten it. Trump comes in. Okay, no, I totally forgot the question that I was going to ask. I'm going to see if I may. There's any questions here. What is the suggestion for how Trump can get ahead of this? Boopsie. Concretely speaking, it's to enact all policy in the first 2 years before 2026.
Right, and also communication's key. Signaling what's going to happen, why it happened, get out in front of it. I would encourage maybe fireside chats with direct, statements to the American people rather than, when there's an emergency, like FDR did.
I remember the question that I was going to ask. It was to quell a number of concerns because I heard your thoughts on it, and it's radically different than some others in terms of whether or not the U.S. dollar ceases being the international currency. And you had a good explanation as to why BRICS wasn't taking anything over anytime soon.
Yeah, so let's talk about the dollar. It's misunderstood. So if you look at the long-term chart of the dollar, it bottomed out during the great financial crisis. It's been in a steady uptrend ever since. And there's 4-year cycles to the dollar, and each consecutive 4-year cycle low is making higher lows and higher highs. So if you look at the dollar, the death of the dollar is not imminent. The dollar is backed by our military and our economy. And the BRICS under Biden became emboldened because he's a weak president, and they started squawking about it. The BRICS have a good idea that was always there. It was behind the scenes. They just didn't talk about it in public. Now they're talking about it. And you got to remember, the BRICS nations all don't get along. They're so deeply ingrained in the dollar system that they have trillions of dollars of their own countries' bonds and corporations issued in dollar-denominated debt. So if they got off the dollar and try to go to a BRICS currency, they might cause a deflationary depression in their own country. So it's a problem. It's long-term. Reserve currencies don't die overnight. They kind of die with a whimper. The pound sterling took 40 years to die, but the clock has started. So we've begun the death throes, but it's not like next year or tomorrow.
Well, so something has to replace it. What does? I mean, it could take so long that we don't even know what would be the replacement. It wouldn't necessarily even be great.
Right. It's someone told me they did an experiment. They went down to South America and they had gold, Bitcoin, the country's own local currency, and the dollar. And they found that most people would take dollars. Bitcoin was hard to take, and people didn't want to take gold. So because gold for some reason the dollar is still king when traveling, trying to do transactions.
I'm going to ask the generic question. What role? I mean, Trump is big on legitimizing Bitcoin, mainstreaming Bitcoin. What I don't know. What is the role that Bitcoin is going to play in any of this from a government perspective?
There's a lot of talk about Bitcoin, and I don't know what the role is going to be. What we just have to make sure that we're not doing crazy. The Treasury has nothing to do with Bitcoin. That's one, and so Bitcoin, being pro-Bitcoin, having an administration that's pro-Bitcoin is a good thing because it's freedom. But let's make no mistake. We have to protect the reserve status of the dollar, and any kind of mention of valuing the dollar with Bitcoin, I think that's a little too soon. We're not there yet. And we need to be very careful for the stability of the global financial markets. I'm all for Bitcoin. And here's the other thing you need to think about. When the government gets involved in Bitcoin, people got involved in Bitcoin because it was anti-government. So just be careful what you wish for.
Well, I mean, government getting involved in Bitcoin sounds like a central digital currency,
well,
which is
that's the canary in the coal mine, and we need to make sure that doesn't happen. I'll be watching that. If there's all sorts of Bitcoin talk and creating a Bitcoin currency, that could be the way they get in without calling it a CBDC. So we have to be cognizant of that.
Roostang is asking me if you were asked, would you assist RFK in his new position with the Trump administration? You would be gladly incorporate yourself into a Trump administration in some manner.
If I was asked, I'd seriously consider it, but I haven't been asked.
And so, okay. I mean, I guess any words of advice if someone's going to clip a 60-second, what should Trump do? What should he not do? And what should he be prepared for come January 20th?
Well, unfortunately, he's declared war on the deep state, which is a good thing. We know this. The deep state's decided to respond by escalating the war in Ukraine. And that's going to lead to escalation in the Mideast because Russia is now going to arm all their allies, Iran, Syria, and the Houthis in Yemen with long-range missiles. So he's going to inherit war escalation and a financial crisis. He needs to get peace negotiations on the table immediately, and he needs to message that this financial mess is not his and why. That's what he needs to do.
All right, and now concretely, no investment advice, no business advice. I didn't even know what gold was at, but gold's at an all-time high. Like, what do people do? Do people want to the extent they have anything to invest? Do they want to liquidate, sit on cash? Like, what would be any binding advice recommendations you
Yeah,
have
I
for?
don't like to give financial advice, but let's look at Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett has accumulated the largest pile of cash in the history of his company, and he owns 4% of the T-bill market, which is is essentially cash. So Warren Buffett's mostly in cash. Now you can do Warren Buffett, or you can do a certain percentage of your assets in cash. And why does Warren Buffett do this? It's called in my world, it's called dry powder. He's expecting lower prices, and he will pick up bargains with his dry powder when everyone else is selling in the panic. So I'm not going to tell you how much of your money should be in cash, but some of your portfolio should be in cash. We call it dry powder, and you view it as opportunistic. You take advantage of lower prices of assets. It's not the end of the world. It's an opportunity if you think of it correctly.
What is the word dry powder? What does the expression mean, or the analogy, the term? Is it not like dry gunpowder?
Dry gunpowder.
Okay.
Yeah. So you have your dry powder to act when you need to.
Amazing, Ed. I don't want to keep you longer than this. Ordinarily, I would end with you, but I'm going to continue on and rant and rave about what's going on in Canada. Where can people find? Well, I mean, people will know where to find you, but where can they find you and subscribe to your newsletter?
Yeah, so we have a company website, financetechnologies.com. That's PH. That's a lot of our economic work. We have a direct link to our vaccine work, humanityprojects.info, which is also on our company webpage, but it's easier to go there. And then you can follow me on Twitter at Dowd Edward, DOWD Edward, and Getter at Edward Dowd. And then my book is Cause Unknown: The Epidemic of Sudden Deaths in 21 and 22.
Hold on a second. It says, do Encryptus's question and stop wasting time like it's the drunk doctor at the I didn't see it. There's one question here. Let me see. I missed it. Encryptus. There's a cat that just got in the way. What are the real world problems that come with deflation? We keep talking about the current monetary systems that is only inflationary, just a matter of how much. Why can't we have a stable currency flat?
Well, the banking system creates booms and busts. It's designed that way. And deflation is death to bankers. So that's why they're always creating inflationary scenarios, whether it's war or COVID or whatever. So the system needs to inflate or die. Deflation is actually, other than the job losses and the shocks to the system, deflation is good for the middle class guy. Lower prices, cheaper energy, lower rents. But the bankers don't like that.
And then one more, if Ed is still on, what's his opinion on the Eurodollar system, not euros used in the EU? I don't even understand that question.
Yeah, I'm not sure I get it, but I mean, I have an opinion on the euro. The euro was put together. It was a global project, and it was put together, I think, in the late 90s. And demographically, the people who are supporting the euro are mostly the Germans and the productive northern countries. The southern countries have a demographic problem and lots of debt and social spending, basically socialism light. At some point, that loose coalition breaks apart and we go back to national currency. It's not a question of if, but when the euro dies. Mm-hmm. The euro will die, and they have a demographic problem.
All right. Ed, thank you tremendously. I don't know if this makes me feel any better or worse, but this is fantastic.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Okay, and also, if you DM me all of the links, and I'll put them in the pinned comment as soon as this is over and pin it, so everyone's going to be able to find it immediately.
You got it.
All right, Ed, talk to you soon. Thank you for coming on.
Bye.
Right, bye-bye. All right, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. I was listening to Ed talk about this in another podcast, and as he's talking about, Trump being set up to inherit a flaming bag of dog doo-doo, and then, the correlation to what they're trying to do right now in terms of trigger World War III, it all made sense, but not in any good way. So we'll see what happens. People, what we're going to do now, we're going to go over to Rumble, and then we're going to go over to Locals. So I'm going to give everybody the link to Rumble. Oh, hold up, before we get there. Actually, let me give everybody the link on CommiTube so you can come on over. Oh, hold on, I got to get rid of that link here. When we're done, I'm going to put Ed's links up there. I want to bring up some of the Rumble rants on the other side. One was here. The white trash panda. Oh, it's white trash panda. I was reading it as the white trash panda because I was thinking of like raccoons, which they call the trash pandas. My second favorite Canuck, when you post clips from an old video, such as the Jessica Rose clip, can you include a link to the full video? Absolutely. I'm an idiot. In fact, I should go. And I forgot to do that with those stupid YouTube shorts. You can post the link to the video. Absolutely. I've been posting the link to the short, but not to the actual full interview. Done. The white trash panda. Finboy Slick says, I'll email you a Tom Woods video that explains the link between inflation and interest rates, Viva. Though better yet, you should have him on to tell all of us. Yeah, Tom hasn't been on since the first time he was on. Let me screen grab that. And Biltong in the house says, add Biltong to your stocking stuffers this season. High protein gifts packed with B12, zinc, iron, creatine, and more. Grab them at Biltong USA Viva 10 for 10% off. We have dried fruit and King of Biltong. We stream Friday and Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central. Shit talking whilst cooking real food. Follow our channel, Eat at Anton's, or the link in there. Eat at Anton's. And if anyone's wondering why he says whilst, it's because he's South African, and that's what they say, eh? Okay. I want to play this clip. This is a total shift. I'm going to see if the individual who put out this video wants to come in and talk about it. Kelsey, I'm going to forget her last name, but she was on with Jordan Peterson talking about maids in Canada. And she talked about some stuff. What was her last name? Jeez Louise. Hold on. I'll get it in a second. She was on with Jordan Peterson. I can't stand being senile. Kelsey Sheeran. Sheren, was on with Jordan Peterson talking about MAID, medical assistance in dying in Canada, and how it's basically become 5th leading cause of death in Canada, 4th leading cause of death, responsible for 4.2% of all death in Canada and only increasing. And she talked about how the process, allegedly, according to her, and it's disputed by this guy who I don't know who he is, the process itself of euthanizing a human. Hold on, I didn't end this stream on YouTube yet. Get over to Rumble, people. I'm ending it on YouTube now. 3, 2, 1.